I have the the focus to this is of course a really important um, chapter, an important principle, and I think that before we get into it, it'd be good to be aware that there is a pragmatic application of this understanding of rhythm, um, and of course the macro stuff, the seasons, years, we use them to mark time, but then there are also cycles within our individual life that are smaller and also measurable. So microcosm, macrocosm. Um, the Mayans marked these great cycles in time, uh, and so because everything has this principle of rhythm, because everything has the principle of rhythm, you can use it to sort of manage your karmic consequences. For example, when you set a chain of events in motion, if you understand the timing, then it's possible to dodge certain effects. Of course, you can't carry that on forever. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you. But this is a really important thing that shamans and magicians learn to understand. And, these energetic um, formulas, I guess. Actually, in Aleister Crowley's Magic in Theory and Practice, he talks about how, any required change can be affected by the proper application of the proper kind and degree of force to the proper object through the proper medium. And, all of these changes have as their basis energy, and that energy manifests as a wave. So this fluctuating electromagnetic wave, you could think of it, the great cycles in time are are wave level. This is where they get their rhythm from. So with that as our sort of metaphysical basis, let's get into the book. I only have one free hand because I'm in the jungle where I don't have like a lot of props and whatnot. So bear with me here. Okay, so everything flows in and out. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The great fifth Hermetic principle, the principle of rhythm, embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion, a to and from movement, a flow and inflow, a swing forward and a swing backward. um, a pendulum like movement, a tide like ebb and flow, a high tide and a low tide, between the two poles manifest on the physical, mental, or spiritual planes. The principle of rhythm is closely connected with the principle of polarity described in the preceding chapter. Rhythm manifests between the two poles established by the principle of polarity. This does not mean, however, that the pendulum of rhythm swings to the extreme poles, for this rarely happens. In fact, it is difficult to establish the extreme polar opposites in the majority of cases, but the swing is ever toward first one pole and then the other. There is always an action and reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking, manifested in all the errors and phenomena of the universe. Suns, worlds, men, animals, plants, minerals, forces, energy, mind, and matter, yes, even spirit manifest the principle. This principle manifests in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life history of all things, and finally in the mental states of man. Even in they say like empires last 250 years, and of course, the larger the scale, the less precise our predictions can be. But you will find that there are, striking generalities that can be made about, different systems that are surprisingly consistent. Um, Another thing that's important to note about that is that all systems are governed by these principles, or they have these attributes. They're observable in the lifespan, but it's not just in terms of cycles. Um, the rising and falling is also a rhythm, and everything rises and falls. Whether you're talking about an empire, a tree, a person. Everything has this element of cycling from one state to the next. Um, and it's also part of where we get our beauty and our symmetry, because without rhythm, without repetition, there is no symmetry. Uh, and so it's the one of the really important tricks to applying and understanding all of these hermetic principles is to learn to see the various ways that they manifest in all different systems. Um, where are we? Beginning with the manifestations of spirit of the all, it will be noticed that there is ever the outpouring and the indrawing, the outbreathing and inbreathing of Brahm, as the Brahmins word it. One thing that's really important I didn't mention in that last part, he's talking about the rhythms, how they manifest in the rise and fall of nations, life history of all things. But the last thing you mentioned is finally in the mental states of man. This is one of the reasons that Hermetic magicians keep a journal, a magical journal. So all of your ritual working, all of your dreams, when you wake up, you immediately write them down and you review it every so often and go back, far. And what you'll see is that you can predict states in your own changes in your own state of mind based on these patterns. You can anticipate the reasserting of negative patterns, perhaps, and you can prepare yourself. You will see them coming. I have in particular noticed these like 11-year cycles in my own life, that now I'm approaching another one, and sure enough, everything is lining up exactly as I expected it to. And it's because I've been paying attention to the rhythm of these cycles that I'm able to do that. So it's a very powerful tool to understand this stuff and have the willpower and discipline to actually apply it. Uh, Speaking of all that, if you guys are interested in coming and working directly with me, we've decided to go ahead and move forward with this 6 months to 1 year. We have a couple of people that are already coming. You can come as long as 6 months if you have the time and can afford it. And I'm going to be teaching ritual magic one-on-one or in groups, and then also how to prepare plant medicine, find the edible plants in the jungle. We'll go to ethnobotanical. We can take field trips to ethnobotanical parks and learn directly from indigenous and Shuar people, or Shuar are indigenous, but indigenous Shuar, Quechua, and Warani. There's all sorts of jungle exploring that can be done, plant medicine ceremonies. It's going to be awesome. So, send me an email if that sounds appealing to you. And the combining of hermetic ritual and plant medicine, this kind of synergy of different systems is I don't even know whose flag that is. um, so yeah, okay, so that's happening if you guys want to come to Miss Hawaii, starting I think in May, and then probably until May of next year. Very casual too. There's no website. It's basically just word of mouth. People from this video or from this channel. Um, Beginning with the manifestations of spirit of the all, it will be noticed that there is ever the outpouring and the indrawing, the outbreathing and inbreathing of Brahm. And that ties back into this uh, idea of the wave giving rhythm to all of the things in creation, because, we talk about how all of the universe is a reflection of this one thing doing one thing, and that one thing is both particle and wave. um, and the wave-like aspects of it is what imparts this predictable rhythm and gives it these cycles, gives it all of its movement. The point has nothing to propel it. It's the wave um, that gives it activity. Universes are created, reach their extreme low point of materiality, and then begin their upward swing. This is symbolized by the pentagrams. The inverted pentagram is not actually an evil symbol unless you think that incarnating in matter is an evil thing. It's a symbol of the descent of what they're calling spirit, but could also be thought of as consciousness, or the organizing principle that compels the chaotic uh, energy to order and symmetry, and gives us form and function and beauty and life. And then at a certain point, and this is supported by quantum loop theory now, that this light or consciousness or order that has now, or energy that has attained order, um, it is returning to the light, and the entire system is collapsing into the singularity, and then it starts over again. Which, it was amazing to read this as a scientific paper, because this is what I've been thinking about the universe for many, many years. I had this vision of it once, and pretty incredible to see that it was probably a correct vision. Uh, it's also why the symbol of the phoenix is so universal and powerful. Um, And so there's a word for this redintegration. When I first read this in a paragraph that Aleister Crowley had written, I thought it was a typo and that he meant reintegration. But redintegration is actually a restoration to a formal state. So it's more specific to this phenomena of this energy returning to its original state, to say redintegration of matter into spirit or matter into light. Um, it's also has to do with entropy, but I think we're going to get into that more in the next chapter. Suns spring into being, and then their height of power being reached, the process of retrogression begins, and after aeons, they become dead masses of matter, awaiting another impulse, which starts again their inner energies into activity, and a new solar life cycle is begun. And thus it is with all the worlds. They are born, grow, and die, only to be reborn. And thus it is with all the things of shape and form. They swing from action to reaction, from birth to death, from activity to inactivity, and then back again. If you go straight long enough, you'll end up where you were. Uh, Thus it is with all living things. They are born, grow, and die, then are reborn. So it is with all great movements, philosophies, creeds, fashions, governments, nations, and all else. Birth, growth, maturity, decadence, death, and then now birth. The swing of the pendulum is ever in evidence. Night follows day, and day night. The pendulum swings from summer to winter and then back again. Corpuscles, atoms, molecules, all masses of matter swing around the circle of their nature. There is no such thing as absolute rest or cessation from movement, and all movement partakes of rhythm. The principle is of universal application. It may be applied to any question or phenomena of any of the many planes of life. It may be applied to all phases of human activity. There is always the rhythmic swing from one pole to the other. The universal pendulum is ever in motion. The tides of life flow in and out according to law. And I've always said that, one of the ways to really test your metaphysical insights is to look for their universality. If they apply to every single system, every single phenomena that you can find in some way, then you probably have stumbled across this sort of universal knowledge. The principle of rhythm is well understood by modern science and is considered a universal law as applied to material things. But the Hermetists carry the principle much further and know that its manifestations and influence extend to the mental activities of man, and that it accounts for the bewildering succession of moods, feelings, and other annoying and perplexing changes that we notice in ourselves. But the Hermetists, by studying the operation of this principle, have learned to escape from some of the activities of transmutation. The Hermetic masters long since discovered that while the principle of rhythm was invariable and ever in evidence in mental phenomena, still there were two planes of its manifestation so far as mental phenomena are concerned. They discovered that there were two general planes of consciousness, the lower and the higher, the understanding of which fact enabled them to rise to the higher plane and thus escape the swing of the rhythmic pendulum which manifested on the lower plane. In other words, the swing of the pendulum occurred on the unconscious plane, and the consciousness was not affected. This they called the law of neutralization. Its operations consist in the raising of the ego above the vibrations of the unconscious plane of mental activity, so that the negative swing of the pendulum is not manifested in consciousness, and therefore they are not affected. It is akin to rising above a thing and letting it pass beneath you. The Hermetic master or advanced student polarizes himself at the desired pole, and by a process akin to refusing to participate in the backward swing, or if you prefer, a denial of its influence over him, he stands firm in his polarized position and allows the mental pendulum to swing back along the unconscious plane. All individuals who have attained any degree of self mastery accomplish this, more or less unknowingly, and by refusing to allow their moods and negative mental states to affect them, they apply the law of neutralization. The master, however, carries this to a much higher degree of proficiency, and by the use of his will, he attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of those who allow themselves to be swung backward and forward by the mental pendulum of moods and feelings. And the one great proof of this ability is the monks that lit themselves on fire in order to protest the Vietnam War. They had certainly acquired a state of mental firmness. There are also monks now that get into boiling pots on top of giant fires, and they have no burns. They're totally fine. There are the voodoo practitioners that run across hot coals. It's a little easier of a trick than actually lighting yourself on fire and not showing any pain response. Um, but it's certainly possible to carry these things to absolutely incredible extremes. For the average person, however, the utility is going to come more from making the subconscious conscious. And what you will find is that you may not be able to actually negate the influence of the subconscious, but by learning its rhythm and understanding its proclivities and bringing that which we normally, where we normally do not shine the light, to make these observations, which takes a lot of courage, practice, and yeah, the ones that lit themselves on fire died, but the ones that get into the boiling water did not, and they didn't show any pain. They didn't scream. They don't do anything. They remain still until they're dead, burned alive. Um, so, so yeah, the ones that lit themselves on fire, yes, they died, but the ones that get into boiling pots of water do not die. Um, so again, in our daily lives, this manifestation of the subconscious, when I was talking about the Hermetic magician's dream journal, for example, that is another way that we are able to map the subconscious, anticipate its attempts to exert influence over us. And, I mean, so much of our behavior is automatic depending on the level of attainment and the mindfulness of an individual. It varies a lot. But it is the overwhelming majority of it in just about every person. And so the trick is to have an awareness of the rhythms of the subconscious and those proclivities, and to be able to anticipate them and to determine how we're going to relate to their effects. Unless you're really trying to protest a war or something, then you're going to want to meditate for like 10 years before you light yourself on fire. And you better be sure that you're ready for that, man, because if you're premature on that one, I'm afraid it's probably not going to be a lot of fun. Uh, the importance of this will be appreciated by any thinking person who realizes what creatures of moods, feelings, and emotion the majority of people are, and how little mastery of themselves they manifest. If you will stop and consider a moment, you will realize how much these swings of rhythm have affected you in your life, how a period of enthusiasm has been invariably followed by an opposite feeling of depression. Likewise, your moods and periods of courage have been succeeded by equal moods of fear. And so it has ever been with the majority of persons. Tides of feelings have ever arisen and fallen within them, but they have never suspected the cause or reason of the mental phenomena. And so this change of energy, everything has an equal and opposite reaction. And he's setting up the next chapter, which is causation, or causality, cause and effect. And so for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So this is why, people that really have extreme mood swings, it's much more obvious with like bipolar people, but there is a law of compensation to go with this law of rhythm. And so, for every high that you experience, there's a low. Some people even believe that from one incarnation to the next, like if you have it too easy, you experience too much pleasure, you're going to have to compensate for that later. There's always a payment. There's a transaction for every exchange of energy. And so a person that suffers unduly in one life will have a life of ease in the next life, but it can go the other way around too. And so this is why, a lot of people will maintain like a very sort of, moderate, even, not too many extremes, middle of the road, average, normal person, so that they don't have to experience the hills and valleys of the mystic or the bipolar person or whatever the case may be. Likewise, your moods of courage have been succeeded by equal moods of fear, and so it has ever been with the majority of persons. An understanding of the workings of this principle will give one of the keys to the mastery of these rhythmic swings of feeling and will enable him to know himself better and to avoid being carried away by these inflows and outflows. The will is superior to the conscious manifestation of this principle, although the principle itself can never be destroyed. We may escape its effects, but the principle operates nevertheless. The pendulum ever swings, although we may escape being carried along with it. There are other features of the operation of this principle of rhythm of which we wish to speak at this point. Um, there comes into its operation that which is known as the law of compensation. One of the definitions or meanings of the word compensation is to counterbalance, which is the sense in which the Hermeticists use the term. It is this law of compensation to which the Kybalion refers when it says, the measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. And so that's what I was talking about a minute ago, where, people that don't want to experience these extremes uh, just need to watch how far they swing their own pendulum of experience. The law of compensation is that the swing in one direction determines the swing in the opposite direction, or to the opposite pole. The one balances or counterbalances the other. On the physical plane, we see many examples of this law. The pendulum of the clock swings a certain distance to the right and an equal distance to the left. The seasons balance each other in the same way. The tides follow the same law, and the same law is manifested in the phenomena of rhythm. The pendulum with a short swing in one direction has but a short swing in the other, while the long swing to the right invariably means a long swing to the left. An object hurled upward to a certain height has an equal distance to traverse on its return. The force from which a projectile is sent upward a mile is reproduced when the projectile returns to the earth on its journey return. This law is constant on the physical plane, as reference to the standard authorities will show you, but the Hermeticists carry it still further. They teach that a man's mental states are subject to the same law. The man who enjoys keenly is subject to keen suffering, while he who feels but little pain is capable of feeling but little joy. The pig suffers but little mentally and enjoys but little. He is compensated. And on the other hand, there are other animals who enjoy keenly, but whose nervous organism and temperament cause them to suffer exquisite degrees of being eaten alive by other animals. Uh, and so it is with man. There are temperaments which permit of but low degrees of enjoyment and equally low degrees of suffering, while there are others which permit the most intense enjoyment but also the most intense suffering. The rule is that the capacity for pain and pleasure in each individual are balanced. The law of compensation is in full operation here, but the Hermeticists go further in this matter. They teach that before one is able to enjoy a certain degree of pleasure, he must have swung as far proportionately toward the other pole of feeling. They hold, however, that the negative is precedent to the positive in this matter. That is to say, that in experience a certain degree of pleasure, it does not follow that he will have to pay up for it with a corresponding degree of pain. On the contrary, the pleasure is the rhythmic swing according to the law of compensation for a degree of pain previously experienced either in the present life or in a previous incarnation. This throws a new light on the problem of pain. Um, yeah, some people's lives definitely do just suck. And if they never develop the courage or the will to swing, they're always going to just kind of maintain this uh, sort of flat line. But if you're talking about people who are suffering for an entire lifetime, if the theory of reincarnation is correct, then their next lifetime may be an absolute breeze. They may be paying off a debt, and this is one of the ways that we can see how the universe could be fair. If there are, aspects and elements of it that are not obviously causal. You know what I mean? Like perhaps Hitler will suffer for 6 million Jews suffering equal to that. All of the pain that he has caused, he will experience over many lifetimes. So it's definitely worthy to consider that it's possible that the universe is not as unfair as it seems. The Hermeticists regard the chain of lives as continuous and as forming a part of one life of the individual, so that in consequence, the rhythmic swing is understood in this way, while it be without meaning, unless the truth of reincarnation is admitted. But the Hermetists claim that the master or advanced student is able, to a great degree, to escape the swing toward pain by the process of neutralization before mentioned. By rising on to the higher planes of the ego, much of the experience that comes to those dwelling on the lower planes is avoided and escaped. The law of compensation plays an important part in the lives of men and women. It will be noticed that one generally pays the price of anything he possesses or lacks. If he has one thing, he lacks another. The balance is struck. No one can keep his penny and have the bit of cake at the same time. Everything has its pleasant and unpleasant sides. Everything contains its contradiction. The things that one gains are always paid for by the things that one loses. The rich possesses much that the poor lack, while the poor often possess things that are beyond the reach of the rich. The millionaire may have the inclination towards feasting and the wealth wherewith to secure all the dainties and luxuries of the table, while he lacks the appetite to enjoy the same. He envies the appetite and digestion of the laborer who lacks the wealth and inclinations of the millionaire, and who gets more pleasure from his plain food than the millionaire could obtain, even as if his appetite were not jaded, nor his digestion ruined, for the wants, habits, and inclinations differ. And so it is through life. The law of compensation is ever in operation, striving to balance and counterbalance, and always succeeding in time, even though several lives may be required for the return swing of the pendulum of rhythm. And so, definitely one of the most important, I almost called it a degree, but that's Freemasonry more specifically. This is one of the most important things to understand, and it can give you a lot of faith and hope during the times that you are suffering. You just remember that this is just paying for your pleasures later, and that it's not a possibility, but it is an inevitability because you have paid. There is a law of compensation, and there is a law of rhythm, and you can even learn to anticipate this pendulum swing, as I said, by keeping a journal or even just by paying close attention to the ebb and flow of the times of your life. Um, Mine, for example, are pretty predictable. On an upswing at the moment, I think, although it could go a little faster, uh, upward always. Although the downward swings are good as well. I mean, I noticed the other day I'm here in the jungle. I we don't have a lot of stuff here. It's a vegan only community, and so we're not vegans. But we have to eat as they do here. So, it just really makes you appreciate an egg, to not have an egg. And little things like coffee, you just when you don't have a lot, you really do learn to appreciate. So even in those low moments, there are compensatory elements that happen in the moment. Do me a favor and hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon or one of the options in the description, and keep an eye on the channel because we're going to market in Guadalquivir in a couple of days, where there's lots of different medicinal plants. There's Shuar shamans. Sometimes there are dances. Um, so, don't miss that. If you can support us, please do. Crash landed here well under budget, which is not the best thing. We're only going to be here probably about a month and a half. So I don't think we're going to like shrivel up and die or anything. Um, but it's not, eating a lot of avocados and a lot of nuts. It's possible to sort of feel full. Um, Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine so. I definitely don't intend to remain vegan. I have no philosophical, or I'm definitely an omnivore. But we agreed to it, so I'm playing along. Um, I'm not going to say I haven't eaten a couple of ants, um, but I mean, insects are vegetables, right? There's crazy stuff out here too, you guys. Check out. I just put a short up that someone found this. I guess it's some type of caterpillar, but it has like 8 tentacles somehow, like legit tentacles. Um, it's definitely unlike anything I've ever seen. It could be a new species. They discover 3 new species a day here still. So crunchy land beans. Well, the Shuar eat a certain ant here. They're really big ones. They have slightly different word for these ants. Means big assed ant, and they're bigger than the ones here. Even they're kind of furry. They kind of taste like a cross between hazelnut and exploded bug guts on your tongue. They just burst and they're just full of liquid. So it's a little weird, but they're not bad. I definitely prefer if I'm gonna eat bugs to eat chantacuras, the massive palm larva. They're great. I like land shrimp. Um, yeah, I figure I can handle it for a month. And I've had all these weird health problems and stuff, and I wouldn't be surprised if it can help short term. But I would never. The only thing we're really concerned about is that we have a 2-year-old, and I really don't want him to be on a vegan diet at all. Not for a minute, not for a day, not for a week. Um, but you know, he just eats bugs, and nobody's gonna stop him. So, he'll find his own ants and eat them up. The my favorite ant type bug was the one we ate with the Warani. Last year, we were walking along with a bunch of Warani children, and all of a sudden, well, actually, I guess I found it. Sure, Earthworth. That's what they all say. And then I can spot you guys by the gray green skin and sunken eyes and lack of muscles and no thanks. You know what I mean? Short term, sure, but it's definitely not something that I'm interested in doing for any period of time. Um, it's definitely not natural. It's definitely not particularly healthy, I don't think. And it's cool for a couple of weeks, but that's it. Yeah, I don't eat a ton of like red meat or anything, but fish I think are pretty solid. Bugs, fish and bugs mostly. When I'm in the Amazon, usually most of my diet is fish and bugs. I thought it'd be an interesting experiment too to just see how it feels to just eat. Plus, man, it's not like we have a shortage of amazing. There's young coconuts to drink and eat the mushy, tender flesh and all kinds of weird little fruits. I'll do a video where I'll put a bunch of them on a table and go through and cut them all open and taste them and stuff because there is just all kinds of stuff here. Even walking around in the jungle, I find things that turn out to be edible. Surprisingly, not much of the stuff seems to be poisonous. Um, so, uh, yeah, it's really great to be here. That's for sure. I found out that there are those cats that eat the coffee and then shit it out, and then people make like $1,000 cup coffee out of it. I thought they were only in Thailand, but they're saying there's like families of them around here, and sometimes you'll see them like carry them around. Um, there are rainbow boas on the property from time to time. I got into it with a Brazilian wandering spider the other day. So a guy found it in the kitchen, and man, those things are not. It's not like a tarantula. A tarantula will run away from you. A Brazilian wandering spider wants to fight, and they're almost as big and way more streamlined and scary looking. That's the scariest thing here, I would say. There are a lot of spiders that just look like death. Like I found one last night that was almost slimy and like ruby red, and it was like jet black and really fast, and these spiders can leap like a fucking rat. I mean, it shocked the hell out of me the first time I was trying to catch one of the big black poisonous looking ones, and it just leaped like a mouse or something like across the room, and I realized could have landed right on my face and just bit me right in the eyeball or something. I mean, they're really fast. Really scary. There are caterpillars here that can kill you. They generally won't, but there's a white one. Actually, I could go get one probably if I felt like getting up. I'm exhausted. I mean, you guys can see the jungle behind me, right? I mean, that's that's the Amazon. Those are cacao trees, the little bushes there. There's tons of cacao here. You can just crack the pods open and eat the fruit. Um, Cacao, in case you don't know, is where you get chocolate from. And it has phenethylamines that are related to MDMA in it. It also has caffeine. It has tons of protein. It has antioxidants. It has the same phytonutrients that are only also found in blue green algae. And it tastes like coconut and pineapple kind of mixed together. And then we have like these huge guanabanas. There are jackfruits that weigh like 50 pounds. There are a bunch of them sitting on the table. These guys are crazy for them. They eat a lot of that. There's the snakeskin fruit. I'm gonna get some gold pans tomorrow. I'll make some videos about that because I just discovered we're on the Zamora River, which is loaded with gold. Um, and by the way, you guys, please do support us if you can at the moment over the next couple of days. I really want to be able to go to this market and acquire a bunch of plants and make some videos about all the things you can do with them. But you know, we're gonna need some PayPal or some Zelle because we crash landed here broke. So if you want to see interesting content on this channel, you gotta hook us up. Otherwise, it's just not gonna happen. It's just gonna be me laying in a hammock reading books for the rest of the month until we get some deposits from these retreats. So. Um, Yep, that's how it is, man. And we are staying like we're not down here. I have to come down here to use the internet, but we have to hike. That's why I'm so tired and I'm slurring my speech and stuff. You know, the cabin that we're staying in, no electricity or anything. We have to hike up to the top of the mountain. And yesterday I had to go all the way up there and all the way back down like 3 times um, to bring our stuff up there. Well, come on and see us, Earthworth. I don't know where you are in the world. I think in the United States, right? It's only $500 or something round trip. And it would really be a load off of my mind if we could get everything booked for the summer and then, you know, not have to worry about the year that we just acquired a lease for. So, and I'd really prefer the people from the channel that I have at least interacted with for a few years now than like total random strangers. Although the first person that I think is coming is an indigenous person from Australia, and probably the first to come and study plant medicine and hermetic magic. So that's really an honor for me. I used to read, you know, the Down Under Dreamtime book about the Aboriginal Dreamtime, and it was one of the first, you know, indigenous cultures I got really interested in. So that was really a surprise. You know, I don't think there are super huge numbers of those guys running around down there. So, you know, hopefully, you know, somebody that has still knowledge of their culture they can share with me. And I think also it'll be good to have someone from an indigenous culture from another part of the world because I'm really trying to build a bridge with the indigenous here. The Quechua are more, I wouldn't say friendly, but they're definitely not quite as, it's not as tense as it is here with the Shuar. Oh, yeah. Well, right on, Charles. Come on down, man. You really should. It'd be great to have some of you guys that have been supporters for a really long time come down and do this with me. And honestly, I mean, I'm going to charge people as little as I can. Instead, you know, most of these people that do these retreats, they're charging as much as they can. I'm charging as little as I can and still make it work, you know. Um, so, and you know, like a lot of people will put packages together and then they'll just triple and quadruple everything. When we're getting guides, you know, and if you guys want to go to like Coca in a canoe and that's a lot of money, you know, divided between everyone, I'm not going to tax it at all. So for what we're going to be able to do down here, it's going to be really reasonable and it's going to be amazing. You know, I mean, this species of fish that we can go pet in the lagoons, for example, that is insane. It's crazy looking, this fish, and they're friendly like dolphins, and they haven't changed in 500 million years. They've been they're dinosaurs basically that have been roaming around in these lagoons of the jungle. as long as there's been an Earth. Um, and there's also, we can eat karchamas, which are like these armored catfish um, that also haven't evolved in 500 million years. So, exploring the jungle, going into the caverns, the waterfalls, ayahuasca, preparing the medicine, learning the hermetic magic. I mean, it's going to be a blast for whoever comes. So hopefully some of you guys that have been around forever. Um, I mean, hell, Charles, I'll give you an extra discount because you have been on Patreon for years now, I think. So thank you guys for your support. We definitely need it right now, and we definitely appreciate being demonetized and everything, and then all of the other stuff that's happened this year has not made it any easier. So I'll see you guys maybe again later tonight. I really want to get into some of this political stuff. It's really been bugging me, a lot of the things that I've been seeing. I'm hesitant to say a lot of things because I don't really want to get deleted, although I'm about to delete all of my social media. None of you guys will ever be able to find me again because my ex is still after me. She's sending messages through Facebook saying terrible things about even my son, like pretending to be other people. I'm really getting tired of it. It's never going to stop, unless I disappear from social media. She's always going to harass me until I'm dead. So I couldn't believe how bad it was today. She made a fake profile guy and she's like, your family is ugly and your kid is mentally disabled. And yeah, I mean, it was just the most ridiculously wretched shit that she could think of. And like, I'm going to just think like, okay, there's all these people out there in social media that just randomly hate me for no reason that are all coming. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to know it's her. Why does she bother with the fake profile? Oh, because I blocked her real one. I get it. She has to make fake ones. Anyways, guys, thanks so much. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us if you can. And I'll see you maybe later tonight. I'm going to do the next mystery school segment when I get up the hill. So check that out as well. And the Book of Lies or the Book of the Law, we're doing the Book of the Law. Also won't be live. But I will always be in the chat and I'll premiere them so that we can watch them together. And if you guys have questions, comments, criticisms, suggestions,